Welcome back to the Quilters Guild of Ireland's home project, which is supported by the Keep Well campaign in the Design and Crafts Council of Ireland. This is our 6th block and 7th video, and these blocks are all to help show you how to sew together the patterns that we're providing. So we'll provide 9 patterns altogether. 3 will be houses, 3 will be trees, and 3 will be paths and gardens. And the idea is that we want you to make at least one block, and the block should be a 10-inch block, which would be 10.5 inches before it's sewn to the next block. So it should measure 10.5 inches by 10.5 inches when we get it. And these blocks ideally will be made from batiks. If you don't have access to batiks, please don't let that stop you from making one. Make a block with whatever you have. And every block that we receive, the maker of that block will put their name in a hat, and we'll be having a big raffle towards the end of the month. The quilts we make with the blocks we'll then use to raise, or to support, I should say, women's shelters and mental health. So please make something, and it doesn't have to be complicated. The blocks are getting a little bit more difficult as we go along, but the first 3 are pretty simple, and even a beginner or someone with very little knowledge of sewing should be able to do them. And if you haven't done much sewing and you want to make one and you need a bit of help, call on someone who has done a bit of patchwork. The only important rule with patchwork is we use a 1/4 inch seam rather than I think it's a 5/8 inch seam that they use in dressmaking. So our seam allowance is quite small compared to other sewing, but it's not rocket science, and there's loads and loads and loads of people who'd be happy to help if you want to try this out. So anyways, going on, this block, which is the 6th block that we're showing on video, is my take on paths and gardens. So the idea is that the shapes on the outer edges are the gardens, and the shapes in the center are the paths. So feel free to go mad with the colors, use whatever other colors you like. I decided I'd kind of go with a pinky theme. You know, nothing subtle here. Anyways, this is a really simple block to construct. So you first sew together this strip, you then sew together this strip, you sew together these pieces in the center, and then you sew together the 3 sets. So I'm going to scoot over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to try to gracefully take the camera over without causing any undue seasickness, and make some little tiny adjustments so you can see the sewing machine. And as before, I'm using a pretty standard sewing machine which only has a straight stitch. My stitch length is 2, but 2.5 is fine if that's what your machine does. And I'm using a 50 weight Aurifil thread in taupe. You can use whatever thread you have. If you only have white or black, that's fine. Use it, just make a block. I would advise, as I said before, that you lay out what you're going to sew so you know where you're going. So I'm going to lay these all in a row. Of course, one is going to fall over the edge. So I'm going to start at the top and sew these together. The beauty of batiks is they don't really have a definite right or wrong side. I apologize, my camera is getting in the way a little bit. I'm actually going to move it in further so I can get my arm around here. I'm going to line up this corner and make sure this whole edge is lined up, and then I'll take it over to the sewing machine and sew this with what is officially known as a scant 1/4 inch. I'll then take the next 2 pieces, which are these 2, and I'm going to put those under the sewing machine. So before I move anything else, I'm going to snip this first one off, and I'm just going to finger press it very gently. And this one went at the top, and whoops, sorry, there it goes at the top, and then the next one goes here. So I actually need the next one before I can do any more sewing. So I will take this off, and again, I'm just going to very gently finger press it, and that's the order. And then I'm now saying that if these go out of order, it doesn't much matter, because they're just random colors put together. So this little piece that I keep adding to the front and cutting off the back is a little, I suppose, leader strip, and it means I don't get any little thread tangles at the beginning of my seams, and I don't have any long bits of threads hanging from my pieces, which is a real bugbear for me. So I like to think that I do this because I'm a little bit lazy and a little bit stingy, and so I'm not wasting as much thread as I would if I'm cutting off a big long strip of thread. So I will give this a gentle finger press as well, and that's the first strip sewn. I'm now going to grab the second strip. So this is the top. So I put them in a slightly different order on the second side. Doesn't matter. You could use the same order if you like things to be symmetrical. I do like things to be symmetrical generally, but I thought it might be more interesting if I put them in a different order. But do as you like. It's completely up to you. Your color choices are completely up to you. There are no hard and fast rules here other than the blocks should be 10.5 inches unfinished to finish at 10 inches. Oops. And then take the next two pieces. And we will add the bit on the bottom then. As I've said before, most boutiques don't have a definite right and wrong side. So I would say, and actually even fabrics that do have a right and wrong side, use the side that has the color you want. So I've seen loads of quilts where people have used the wrong side of the fabric as the front of the fabric, and it can be quite effective. Sometimes you don't get quite the right shade you want. So flip it around, look at it, see what colors you like, and do as suits you. I think that it's the rules we were bound by in the past are a little bit more flexible now. Okay. So that's the second strip for the sides. And now I'm going to get my long skinny strips. And the only reason this block is a little bit more difficult than the last Paths and Gardens block is because there's more pieces and they're small. So like this is quite a long skinny piece. So you do have to be pretty good. Your seam allowance needs to be fairly accurate. Otherwise it won't go together well. So I've sewn a couple of pieces, and then I go to the end and I just match up that corner as well, and I'm going to hold that with my finger, trying not to stretch it as I'm holding it. And when you're sewing these together, sew at a speed that's comfortable for you. So if you saw that sewing and thought, oh my god, that was far too fast, I could never do that, don't sew that fast. If you like to sew at a nice, even, slow pace, that is absolutely fine. Do what suits you best. So again, 3 stitches, and 3 or 4 stitches, I should say. and I'm going to match up the bottom corner, and with my left hand I'm going to make sure that the edges are lined up, and I'll sew this one a little bit more slowly. The biggest danger with sewing fast is that you make mistakes more quickly. Something else to be aware of, and this is something that I know I do quite regularly, is when you get to the bottom, don't allow yourself to veer off in one direction or the other. I'm guilty of this, as I said. I do it all the time, and I have to keep reminding myself not to do it. So I'm kind of, this is the first piece I put together, and I had the greens, I think, towards the outer edge. So I'm going to just press that with my finger. And I'm going to press this in the same direction. So I'm going to pull this piece over. If a handy tip, when you lay out your pieces, take a picture of it with your phone. Most of us have cameras in our phones now, and it's really easy to take a quick picture. And then if you have any confusion about where something goes, you can reference your picture. Again, I'm going to do a couple of stitches and then line up this bottom corner. And you can see there. And then make sure all these edges are lined up and nothing is hanging over one side or the other. So that is the center paths, and here's the first set of gardens to go next to it. So I'm going to sew that to the edge, and as before, I'll match up that corner. You could pin this and just pin at every seam, and then you don't have to pay as much attention when you're sewing, but I find by holding it and kind of keeping an eye on it as I'm sewing, I'm kind of aware of what's going on. So I've got lots of seam allowances down this edge, and I don't on this edge. So I'm actually going to press it. I'm going to press the seam allowance so it goes under this piece that has no seam allowances or no seams going through it. It just makes it a little bit tidier. If there are seams on both sides, then I might think about how I was pressing a bit differently. But generally, I'll press to the space that has the fewest seams. So. Whoops, there's the other side ready to sew on. So I'm going to flip this on and sew the other side. And again, I'll line this up. And then I'll line up the bottom corner, which you can see there is those two edges are matched. And I'm going to hold that with my index finger and thumb of my right hand, and then I'm going to check the edges as I'm sewing with my left hand. And my little tab has got caught because I have too many long threads on it, so I need to trim that up. And no. think it's time. This one went into the scrap bin. It's looking fairly messy. So I'll open this up, and again, I'm going to press to the side that has fewer seams. And very gently finger press that, and then you can turn over and you can see how the seam allowances are pressed. I'm going to take this to the iron and then do a stay stitch around it. But I've done that with a few of the videos, so I don't think you need to see it. It's just that the stay stitching will prevent any of these seams from pulling apart. So actually, I apologize, I will do the stay stitching. I'll be right back. I'm going to iron this. Okay, as I explained before, the stay stitching, I do this on blocks where I may not be using them straight away, or quilts that I may not be quilting straight away. And it prevents the seams from pulling apart because we don't use back stitches. Sometimes these seams can pull apart at the edge. So by doing this little stitch all the way around the edge of the piece, and it's only in about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe an 1/8 of an inch, it just holds all those seams together, and it prevents it from just stretching or distorting or pulling apart. And I would not normally do this on blocks, but if I was sending a block away where it was then going to be handled, yeah, I probably would, because it'll just prevent anything from pulling apart. It also allows me to make sure my seam allowances are going in the directions that I want, and that they're all tidy. Lost my train of thought there. Sorry about that. As I said, it's only in about an 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. You don't want to go in, or sorry, not an 1/8 or 1/4, an 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch. You don't want to go in a 1/4 of an inch, because then this stay stitch line may be seen when the block is sewn to the next block, and you don't really want to see a line of thread. So just do it at the very, very edge of the fabric. I actually lengthen my seam, or my stitch length, a tiny, tiny bit, which makes it go a wee bit faster. Okay, whoops. So you can see, whoops, there's the stay stitch along the edge, that little tiny line of sewing. And this, if I give this a tug now, those blocks cannot be pulled apart. So that's the benefit of doing that. There's my Paths and Gardens, my second Paths and Gardens block. So have fun with this. Enjoy it. Talk to other quilters. Talk to people who might like to do a bit of sewing. This doesn't have to be done by machine. It can be done by hand as well. Just make a 1/4 inch seam. If you don't know what a 1/4 inch seam is, contact us and we'll try to explain it. And if you make some blocks or a block, contact us at the QGI@gmail.com, or contact us on Facebook, the Quilters Guild of Ireland, and we will tell you who to send the blocks to. Okay? Thanks a million. Bye.